say good evening to all of you. Welcome to E.P.I.C, Northeast Georgia, engaging people in conversation. Our focus group panel consists of men and women from 6 Northeast Georgia counties: Barrow, Clarke, Madison, Oconee, Oglethorpe, and Walton. Each panelist was chosen based on personal experiences they have relating to one or more of 6 topics we've chosen for this evening. Those topics are business, economy, education, free speech, healthcare, and immigration. If you would please welcome our panelists. The E.P.I.C questions were carefully chosen to prompt candid responses and were specifically designed to steer dialogue away from political or ideological rhetoric, while offering the kind of prompts that will lead to the stories that will make this evening informative and inspirational. In your program, you will see an audience participation focus sheet. We ask that you take part in this focus event by way of the questions you see there. Your input is important. We're very honored this evening to have as our moderator, Mr. Tim Bryant. Tim is the host of the WGAU Radio talk show Classic City Today and is a familiar voice around Northeast Georgia. Would you join me in welcoming our moderator, Tim Bryant?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I get to be the bad guy first. I've been told to tell you to turn off your bleeping cell phones, or at least silence them. We wouldn't want you to miss any important text messages. We just don't need to know about it. I'm always reminded of the story when I speak in front of groups like this, or when I appear and moderate an event like this. I don't know why this story comes to mind, but it always does. It's the story of a fellow who found himself dead and at the gates of heaven, greeted by St. Peter. And St. Peter says, you know, with our new arrivals here, we have a survey question we like to ask. He says, tonight's question is, did you ever do anything brave while you were on earth? And I says, what do you mean brave? He says, well, for example, were you ever in combat? Were you ever a soldier? Were you ever a first responder, a fireman or a police officer? Fellow says, no, nothing like that. Says, well, there was this one time, though, when I came up on a scene, there was this motorcycle gang, big burly biker guys, and they were harassing this little old lady. And I just dove right into the middle of them. I went right up to the biggest one, I punched him in the nose, and I said, you stop that right now. St. Peter's impressed. He says, when did this happen? Fellow says, oh, about 5 minutes ago. Feel a little bit like that tonight in front of this large panel here. By way of logistics for the evening, I would say to our panel here, and I would say 2 things. Don't be offended when I don't know your names. I'm going to try to read name tags, and that's about the best I'm going to be able to do tonight. I'll do a lot of pointing. And I would also say this, don't feel obligated to answer every single question. If 18 people, or however many we have up here, answer every single question, we'll be here till midnight, and I get up too early for that. So feel free to respond. Please do. Understand, too, that the more concise the answers, the more we're going to get to, the more of these questions we're going to get covered here. But as these questions ring out, I'm not big on formality. I don't need to see you raise your hands. Just jump in, and if you have something, I'll try to point to and get to as many as we can. The opening question is this, and again, anybody who wants to dive in, some of these questions will apply to some of you and not all of you. This first one will, and if anybody and everyone wants to weigh in, we'll take a moment to address it or hear from you. And we'll start on the back here and work our way around. And again, everybody wants to take a swing at this one. A simple question, what made you want to be a part of E.P.I.C's panel this evening? Anybody on the back row?
I wanted to be a part of it because I came to this country 20 years ago. I came to this country 20 years ago, and I'm surprised about the changes in ideology of this country. So I just wanted to share my thoughts and hoping to get a reflection from you about topics like immigration and education.
Which country?
I'm from Colombia.
Colombia, and they're saying they can't hear you. Jacqueline, maybe we can adjust the sound on this microphone. I do believe it's on.
Yes, I'm a salon owner here in Watkinsville, Georgia. I've been a salon owner, self-employed for 27 years, and hopefully I'll be an inspiration for you to let you know that I am a single mother and have put 2 through college myself.
Wow.
I'll take the song.
Testing.
There you go. Take charge. Tanisha.
I wanted to be on the panel tonight just to be able to share my perspective on different things, especially being a minority in Clarke County. I feel like my perception may be different than other people, and I hope to encourage you all and hope that you all will be able to see things from a different point of view.
All right, Laura.
My cousin Pam Hendricks asked me to be here, and I'm honored to be here. I've taught accounting at what's now Georgia State University for 22 years, and so I've taught over a span of 28 years, so I've seen a lot of students. I've seen kind of a changing student over the past 28 years.
Hello, my name is Ashley. I was invited, so I showed up. No, I'm also here to share successes, failures, hopefully inspire, perhaps gain perspective, as well as provide.
All right.
Thank you. My name is Beth Warner. I'm currently a shepherd. I worked in healthcare before that, and Joan Roden asked me to come. If you know Joan, end of story.
All right, hang on. Whoa. Time out. Get the microphone back. Lynn, is it? I'm sorry, what's your name? Linda. Shepherd?
Shepherd.
Like with sheep?
Raised Tunis sheep, an American heritage breed.
Okay, all right. Linda.
My name is Linda. We own 2 businesses in Clarke County, and my sister told me about it, and I said, well, that sounds like fun, and she said, tag, you're it. And so here I am.
I'm Lee J. I clean windows, and I was asked by Joan also to come and share.
All right. There's a lot of that going around. Matt, we'll start with you down here.
Yeah, I think the question itself may be a little misleading because it says, what made you want to be here? And that assumes you do want to be here. No, in all seriousness, I was asked by close family friends, and I feel like the public forum intimidates me to no end, and I keep to myself and leave other people alone, but I thought this would be an opportunity to get out here and represent a group of people, which I feel like is kind of in the middle on a lot of issues, and just get some conversation going.
All right.
I'm Joe Reel. I own Bentley's Butcher Shop in Winder, and I come here because Joan had asked me to, because I wear many different hats. I'm also a coordinator at the Barrow County Veterans Resource Center, and on the board of directors of Adventure Bags, Children in Crisis, and a member of the Chamber of Commerce.
And you said you're a butcher?
Yes,
Have you met the lady with the sheep back here?
We're 100% all natural.
My name is Josh Collins, and I work at Oconee State Bank. I've been there for a few years now, but I routinely have to ask people, hey, what's your story? Why are you coming in to see us today? So I figured if I'm willing to do that every day, why shouldn't I be willing to give my story once? So that's why I'm here.
I'm Laura Croom. I teach at Oglethorpe County Primary School. I'm the chair of Educational Law and Policy for Sci-State, which is part of Delta Kappa Gamma Women's Education Program. And so I thought this was a good opportunity to share the challenges that teachers face today.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynn Wicker, and I spent 30 years as an educator in Florida, and finishing that career 2 years ago and moved to Athens. I was a teacher and a principal and a superintendent. Joan asked me, I said yes, because I love sharing great success stories about the good things that are going on in education.
Where in Florida?
Tallahassee.
That's where I'm from.
Yay.
Yeah, there we go.
Hello. I'm Diana Perez, and I'm part of the Joan group. She invited me to share a story, maybe encourage, just like everyone else in the panel, answer questions, especially about what people don't really want to talk about and touch subjects. So that's why I'm here.
All right.
Help out understand.
Trey.
I'm Trey Reed. I'm the owner of Between the Edges Painting here in Athens, Georgia. And I was asked to be here and tell my story is, what it's like to be a small business owner. What are some of the challenges and difficulties that I face on a routine basis of operating a small business here.
Hello, my name is Tashana Willoughby, and I have a small business. It's a cleaning service. And I was asked to come and share my story. Not only do I want to inspire, I am looking to be inspired. I love engaging in conversations on different topics because the world is full of views that nobody gets together and actually conversate on.
Very good job at being concise, everybody. We'll be even more concise with this. We'll handle this part with a show of hands, and feel free to raise your hand to any or all that may apply to you here. Based on your personal experience, I'm going to run down a list of 6 topics here. Which of these 6 do you believe you have the most to contribute this evening? And to the extent that I can remember your responses here, I'll circle back to you as we cover these different subjects. Again, as I go through this list, raise your hand if it applies. If it doesn't, don't raise your hand. Based on your personal experience, which topics do you believe you have the most to contribute this evening? Business. Who's in business? Almost, actually a little more than half of you. The economy. Who's here to talk about the economy? It is, after all, the dismal science. Education. We have some teachers, 2 or 3, 4, 5, okay. Freedom of speech. That should be everybody. What's the matter with you people? We're all here. Come on. Healthcare. Okay. And immigration. 1, 2, at least 2. Okay. Again, not everybody has to answer every question here, but we'll get into the meat of this thing. And we'll start with the business questions. So if you have ever owned a business or been in one, you're at least eligible to answer the question. First of all, and again, show of hands, who owns a business or has owned a business in the past? Again, that's about half of you. So anybody that wants to dive in here, and we got a couple more microphones. You can grab them and pass them along and pass them around. Anybody wants to take a swing at this one? What prompted you to take on the headaches of owning a business? Anybody? All right. Jacqueline, you're the salon owner, correct? You're the salon owner, correct?
I am the salon owner of Salon on First here in Watkinsville, Georgia.
Okay.
What prompted me? Because I love what I do. I've been doing hair for 27 years. I owned a bigger salon. It was called the Ritz Salon in Athens, Georgia. I had 17 employees. It was way too much for me. So then I downscaled, and I have 4 people that I work with. Why? I like my own business. I like to be able to make my own hours, and I do what I want.
My understanding of people who own their own business, those hours are usually 24, but that's... anybody else as to why you decided to go into business? Yes, ma'am.
I went into business. At first, it was...
and I'm sorry, tell me again, what kind?
I have a cleaning service.
Okay.
5 years in, I actually started my business with my mom. I thought I was starting it for her, but little did I know it's for me. And it gave me the freedom to see about my kids, because I have 3 boys who are now teenagers. And at the time, I was running all over the place and trying to work a 9 to 5 and make sure that they stay active and focused. And then I like the independence of being able to set my own hours. It's nice.
Yeah, 3 teenage boys.
Yes.
I would call that staff, but that's up to you. And this is kind of the same thing here, and again, anybody that wants to answer here, including anybody who's already answered, what are the greatest challenges within your business? Anybody? Matt?
And I guess from earlier I didn't say, my name's Matt Thomas. I've got real estate companies and real estate, and I went into business on my own because I grew up in a family with parents that both retired from government jobs and the restraints that come with that, and I was not interested in that lifestyle. So from day one out of college, I have run my own business. But as far as restraints go, I think, frankly speaking, the non-profitable parts of business ownership that you have to go through. There's countless hours and dollars spent on filing tax returns and complying with ordinances and things of that nature that aren't profitable, actually cost you money. So a large part of my day, my week is spent doing things that aren't, that don't bring money home to the family. So that's the challenges that I see right now.
And Actually, you kind of answered the next question, so if somebody else wants to take a shot at it too, or you at least alluded to it, how has your city or county hindered you from being as successful as you desire? Anybody who works in Athens, you guys are at the front of the line. Jacqueline, go ahead. Yeah, you need a mic. We'll get it down to you.
I'm so glad you asked that question. How the city has hindered?
Sure.
Okay. I have been at this salon.
And I'm sorry, you're in Watkinsville?
I am in downtown Watkinsville, right behind Merco's. I have been in the same place for 6 years. I've been to the city to ask for a mirror, traffic mirror, trimming trees. I know this sounds petty, but for my clients to be able to get out, you cannot see. So anyway, we had them come and trim the bushes. Then the bushes died. So the city had to come back and plant more bushes and water the bushes. So I keep going, I keep calling. I know they're tired of me. But I went on Amazon and I said, I know where you can get the traffic mirror. It's $30. So I guess it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for it.
You're dealing with the city of Watkinsville or the county?
The city.
City of Watkinsville. Anybody else? Got a story of a fight with City Hall? Yes, ma'am.
Just to add, I'm a former business owner. I had a restaurant, Transmet West on Oglethorpe Avenue.
Yeah.
We are no longer there. So. But some of the problems and the difficulties I faced is the approval of corporate chains. It's everywhere. They pop up everywhere. There's no proximity onto where another restaurant or another competing business can open. There's no mileage restrictions. For instance, mine was a pizzeria, and at the very end of the road, within my first year of business, another pizzeria opened. That immediately impacted us. All of the business that came that mile and a half down the road to see mine then stopped at the corner. There's just no restrictions, and I think that if there were some policy changes through the counties, and this again was in Clarke County, if there were some policy changes that would aid in the benefit of small businesses. You know, we don't have the working capital that all of these large corporate businesses have. So for us to price compete with those, it's often not an option. You know, Papa John's is going to say you can come get a pizza for $7. That's not a feasible thing for me to do. It just wasn't an option for the quality and the product that we presented. And then again, to have a restaurant open with with a very similar business plan, open within 2 miles, it greatly impacts your ability to succeed. So I think if there were restrictions on that, it would aid to the benefit. And then I would say advertisement on the roads. I once had a chalkboard out, which I'm sure many of the small business owners have had as well. Had it out, open on the sidewalk, come and join us for lunch, just promoting our specials. And I happened to look out the door and see a code enforcer picking up my chalkboard to put in his truck. And I thought he was stealing it. Hey, stop, I've caught you, I've prevented crime. You're welcome. But that was not the case. He simply said, this is a code, it's enforced, you're not allowed to have this on the sidewalk.
This was on Oglethorpe?
This was on Oglethorpe. And Mayor Denson happened to be in about 2 days later, and I had a conversation with her about it. I said, you know, that strikes me as odd. They want me to go and pay for the right to put a chalkboard outside on the street. And she said, well, you see how it could get to be a problem. I said, I'm not sure that I do. I'm not sure that we're looking at this from the same, but that's just one example of another, you know, of just yet another fee, as he was stating, something that you have to pay to keep the business running that's not profitable. It's not aiding that small business owner in any way, and I think a bit more support to these small business owners in each county would do well. It does well for everyone.
See, anyone else want to take a swing at that one? Yes, sir.
I had the same problem. Out on my marquee, I had a banner that advertised that we were an all-natural meat company. And code enforcement came and said, you got to take the banner down.
And this is in Winder?
In Winder, right on the main street. And so I took it off the marquee. I couldn't understand why. And when I went, I'm also a member of the Barrow Chamber. when I went there, we talked about it, and I would have to pay to leave that sign banner up on a marquee. And I says, I'm a small business. I can't afford to pay $100 to have a sign up there for a month. So I decided to take my banner and hang it on my building. Along comes code enforcement. They says, you can't have the banner hanging on the outside of your building. I said, what? It's not on the marquee, it's on my building. So I had to take it down. And I was pretty upset about it. So I took it inside, and I have big glass plate windows inside, and I hung it on the inside window where they can't tell me to take it down because it's inside my shop.
You might have considered an airplane. And just have it in the car
But
right behind.
I didn't like it, and we used to have, I have a smokehouse out back where we smoked pulled pork and ribs and turkeys for the holidays. So during the summertime, I'd bring one of the smokers around front and smoke some Boston butts and do pulled pork sandwiches and hamburgers and hot dogs. And we used to sell them out there. Customers used to come driving through and picking it up. Here comes code enforcement again. You can do all the cooking you want out there and fine, but they have to go inside the building to pay for it. I said, what? We had a register set up outside. It's my business. So we had to take the register and move it inside.
Did they give you any rationale for that?
No, it's against the code. Yeah. So we end up doing it inside, cooking it outside, bringing it and serving it on the inside. And of course, the business wasn't as great, so we eventually just quit doing it and just did it in catering. But it was horrible.
It sounds like. Does anybody have anything good to say? Who or what helped you along the way in your business, either through resources, advice, encouragement, or any other ways?
Okay, I'll go on that.
Sure.
Yes, the Chamber of Commerce. I joined the Barrow County Chamber of Commerce. I'm an ambassador now, but when I first opened up, they were there, and they got me involved with the small business in University of Georgia, and they helped me do a lot of the work that needed to be done for the plans and doing the schedules and billing and how much to spend and what the gross profits and all that are. They did an excellent job. And we prospered from that because we opened in 2012 when my job got shot down. And if it wasn't for the chamber to nurse me along, and because I never ran a business before, and it was right at the peak of the Great Recession, people didn't think we'd ever make it, but we did.
Good.
So I'm very thankful for that. And we end up being Business of the Year for Barrow County
Good
last
job.
year.
Congratulations.
And I would echo that as far as small business development at UGA. We've had some great success with some of the people who've come out to our farm, who came out and worked with us when we had a restaurant many years ago. We've also had great support from the University of Georgia Extension Office. Madison County has a great extension agent, and with the Natural Resource Council, because they are interested in being good stewards of the land, of keeping animals out of the creeks and byways. And so there's, although you wouldn't always think there's a aligned interest between a small farm and an agency like that, in fact, there are many points of common interest. And they've come out and spent time with us. We've built relationships. And that's something I'd recommend for anybody who's in that field of work.
Great. Moving on to the economy. And again, anybody and maybe everybody who wants to take a swing at this one. In what way or ways Has the economy affected your family or business recently? And by recently, we'll say within the last 5 years. On the end, Lee. And tell us again what you do.
I'm a window cleaner.
There you go.
Cleaning business. It was birthed out of necessity with the economy crashing. Had to find employment elsewhere, and it just wasn't paying the bills. So then I had to step out and pretty much made my own position, because the job I was working, the hours I was working, it wasn't really feasible to have a regular part-time job. So I started at 4 in the morning. We go to about 2 in the afternoon. And by 6:30, I was in bed getting ready, because I had to get up and go to work the next day. And we were working a 4-day work week. So I was off Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So those were the 2 days that I pretty much built my business on. And that was basically because of the economy.
The last 5 years have been pretty hard, because I've never seen clients that had to move out of state to get another job. So when you lose 2 color clients, that's significant within a year. And
I'm sorry, 2 what kind of clients?
2 color clients. Like if you're doing color on them, it's significant. You have to add it up.
The only one who wondered.
For the year, I mean, it could be $1,500. So you lose that income, and then you've got to spend more time rebuilding your book again.
Okay. Anyone else? How were you affected by the economy? Yes, ma'am. And tell us again a little bit about you.
My name is Tanisha Brooks, and I do grant writing consulting.
There you go, grant writing,
For me, I have a new business, but the economy has taken its toll on the nonprofit world. So it's hard to find funding and secure funding. And a lot of nonprofits really can't afford to hire a grant writer because they don't have the money. So that puts all of us in a bind, because I mean, I can volunteer, but at some point you have to be compensated, because it does take a lot of time. So there's no money to pay the grant writer. There's no money available in funding. It makes it harder to find the money. And so at the end, sometimes it's just a total loss.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle. Anyone down front here? Yes, sir. Josh.
When I graduated from college, I had just gotten married, and about 6 months in, my wife got laid off. So when she got laid off, I was kind of sitting there going, okay, what do we do now? And she's, in tears, and I'm like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through. And I immediately just start looking for jobs anywhere I could find them. And I do a lot of tutoring and things like that on the side. And one of the ladies I worked with was like, well, what are you really looking for? And I was like, I'll take anything. So I actually ended up starting at the bank. She's like, I've got an intro job here for you. It's just an intro job. It doesn't pay a ton, but, it'll get you started. And, it's been a little while at the bank, and I've moved up several times since then. So I'm so thankful for the opportunity, because, from the toughest challenges you have, you can do great things, is the way I look at it, as long as you take them as an opportunity. But originally, when I started there, it was, it was long days, working 2 jobs, and just trying to, console my wife, going, I'll see you at some point. Because I was working about 16 hours a day and then sleeping at some point. So she was kind of sad about that, but fortunately she is fantastic, and we made it through.
Yeah, well, and that actually, your story actually answers in its own way our next 2 questions. Anybody else, feel free to dive in here. Has the economy caused you or a spouse to seek employment in a different field or with a different employer? And has the economy necessitated a spouse who was not currently employed to seek employment? Anybody that falls into that category? Down here. Yes,
I apologize, my name tag has fallen off.
And your name is?
Trey.
Trey.
I think for me, owning the painting business, I know I did not have to make a career change, so to speak, but a few years back, it took a couple of years before I could have enough work to hire someone, and about the 3rd year in, it was extremely tough. I mean, there was just not, there's just nobody calling, and I had a friend of mine who, God bless him, he would give me work here and there. He owns a very big, successful business here in Athens and would have rental properties and stuff like that, and, I had the dream of owning the business and making it a success, and I really wanted to be able to give other people jobs, to be honest. I wanted to be able to help other people the way that this friend of mine was helping me. and it just wasn't happening. And I mean, just day after day went by with no calls, and he offered me a job at his business. And I mean, I talked to my wife about it, and it was tough. And I said, no, I think I'm going to ride this business ownership thing out. And I'm glad I did. We've this year has, we were talking before it started, and this year has been absolutely the best that we've done since I opened it 4 years ago. You know, I'm not an expert on the economy to say why that is, but I know that my business has gone up dramatically since the beginning of the year. But it was really tough last year. I mean, I was really trying to decide, am I going to take this job with this other guy that's not as much, but at least it's secure. I know his job is doing well enough to support me. He can handle me. Yes, we contemplated it. You know, do we need to? I went, was thinking, geez, do I need to go apply at the mall or Walmart or something to get this done? So
now I'm curious. Painting houses and buildings.
Yes, sir.
Are existing people building new houses now? Is new home construction starting? What do you see?
I see there is a lot of new construction. There's a lot of remodeling. We have a lot of clients that have the income to build. One of our big jobs right now is with a lady who is currently building a 7,000 square foot home here in Athens. And, for us, it's we've been getting calls for, sort of at the Oconee connector where they're doing a lot of new constructions, commercial type things. So for us, it's a little bit of both. There is a lot of new homes and new constructions. And then on the other side of it, there's also a lot of people who are saying, we finally have the money to finish our basement, so let's go ahead and do it. So.
Yeah, good. Anyone else to that question? It's about you and your family, your spouse, you who've had to change jobs, change professions. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Ashley, was it?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I love to hear that. I love to hear about a business succeeding. We ran into that. We had to make a decision with the restaurant. At just the 2-year mark, business was declining. As I said, there had been another restaurant that had opened up very close to us that had impacted us greatly. The school was closing for a rebuild. We lost all of our foot traffic, so it was a huge impact. My business, we made the decision to close. The business across from me is closed, and the one beside me has since closed as well. So unfortunately, that area took some impact, but it presented opportunity. I took a job as a development manager with another company and have been with them since. Now, unfortunately, they had hit a hard time and they just recently dissolved. So I find myself, for the very first time in my adult life, unemployed, which is not my choice. It's just a really interesting thing to go through and to experience the job market and what's available. But it's an opportunity, and I look forward to a challenge, so I'll accept it. My husband as well, he's a police officer in Athens, and as you all know, they're not at the top of the pay scale. So it's just, it's interesting to go through those experiences. The Athens Clarke County Police Department recently requested a 19% raise, and that was just to stay competitive with Georgia State Patrol. And the county came back with
25% pay raises.
Yes, and the county came back with 1%. They said, we'll give you 1. Try again next year. So it's just interesting to go through this wave. We've been up, we're down now, and I have friends who are going through similar things. I've had a lot of friends move out of the state as well for jobs. People take on traveling positions where they've left their immediate area to go and seek opportunity elsewhere. So I do think it will improve. I'm glad to hear of businesses succeeding and doing so well. That's exciting and just means that it will present itself. It's just a matter of finding the path.
Again, you've anticipated the next question. We'll deal with this first with a show of hands, and anybody who wants to answer the question more elaborately, please do so. But it's a simple question here, and we'll do it in 2 parts. Based on your current status, the way things are now, let's just see a show of hands on this. Based on your current status, how do you project that your financial future will be? Will it improve? Do you think it's going to get better? Do you think it's not going to get better? Do you think it's going to get worse? Anybody? I think we saw unanimous responses. Oh, somebody down here, Diane, do you think it's going to get worse?
No, it's going to get good.
Oh, it's going to get good. Okay, all right. Okay.
Very good.
Okay. Things are really going to suck soon. I know it. No, things are going to get good. Okay. Anybody want to expand on that or elaborate on that? Yes, ma'am, on the end.
In my future, that I do see that my business is going to grow and it's going to financially become more stable, because in the cleaning service is always opportunities. Is like Trey was just saying, that the economy is building now. It's coming back around, so you're getting more opportunities to get out here and find work, or, you know, gain financial stability within your business if you're out here, you're networking, and, you know, you're putting the quality of work out. I think a lot of times it also depends on that person who's getting out there, who is working, putting the groundwork in for that business. When I first started 5 years ago, it was tough. It was very hard. I was homeless with 3 boys for 2 years. Not really homeless, I had family. But it was hard, because if you really look at cleaning, we do the most detailed work, and at times we get the lowest pay. So I had to set my standards. I had to prove myself a lot, and I was a young woman doing it. So at first I wasn't received until I showed what I could do, and it's been very good.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. Education. First of all, and I've already forgotten, I know we got one teacher. How many teachers? A couple of teachers here. Education. We spend the rest of the night on this one. And anybody else who wants to dive in here, but we'll focus on our educators. I love this. Talk about an open-ended question. What kind of changes have you experienced in education in your years as an educator? First of all, how many years, if you don't mind telling us?
16.
16. Yeah. What's changed since 2001?
It's changed tremendously in 16 years. We have, you know, things from the state and federal government that are coming down the pipe, constantly changing, but we're not getting any kind of funding to help supplement those changes that they're making. We haven't had a raise since 2006 in Oglethorpe County. We got one this year. It was a 3% raise, but it was not based on the pay scale. It was just a county by county decision there. Then
I'm going to guess, you can tell me, it's none of my business, but I'm going to guess anyway that the insurance premiums probably ate it up.
We just filled out our paperwork for that, and it did increase again this year. So there went your 3% raise. But it was nice to at least get something this year. We went from, when I first started teaching, we were doing the QCCs, and then we went to Georgia Performance Standards, and now we're at Common Core. And we just seem to be changing the curriculum every year, but then you don't get any type of training on it or any funding to help buy the supplies to do what they're asking you to do.
What do you teach?
I teach 2nd grade currently. And it's, we just got a new science curriculum this year. So you're supposed to spend 45 minutes a day doing this science curriculum, but you're mandated to do 180 minutes of math and, you know, 190 minutes of reading. So unless they're going to extend the school day, it's really not going to work for them. And I think, you know, you got to learn to read and write first.
Sure.
So.
I'm sorry, Belen, help me with the name.
Belen, when I came here, I was working as a Spanish teacher at the University of Georgia.
And I'm sorry, if you don't mind, when did you come here?
1996.
Okay.
I noticed my students were learning. I wouldn't say they were fluent in Spanish because normally I was teaching the beginners levels. And the word particularly was that we were still doing homework on paper. That means the students were actually writing complete sentences, writing simple but complete sentences in Spanish. We made them read, sing, and talk in class. And they were actually learning basic Spanish, but they were learning. With time, the methodology started to change. These big book companies started coming to schools and talking to the superintendents of education, selling these computer programs that gave the students games and ECAs. So the students went from writing, reading, and talking in the classroom to play games in computers that gave them ECAs. And I noticed The students are not that talkative anymore. They are not learning to write complete sentences. I'm talking about simple sentences in Spanish. And I think we have English teachers here, and they can say the same about English. The students are not learning to write anymore. They are not learning to talk and communicate. And you will say part of it is because they are like robots on those cell phones and Facebook and all of this media system. But part of it is also the education system. I think parents need to be more aware of the changes in methodology that are going on in schools and the university. The computer and the systems are good, the technology is good, but the abuse of it is negative in the education of the children. Another thing I have noticed is we pay a lot of taxes that goes to education. But the money is not going to the quality of education. The money is going to these luxurious buildings. So how does it affect the good education of the children? When I was in school, I'm talking about Colombia, of course, but it's more or less the same system. We didn't have these luxurious buildings. They were simple buildings. And we didn't have all of these computer systems and games in computer, and we were learning. That's all that I wanted to say.
Lynn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, okay. So I want to thank Laura here as a teacher, because I'm a huge, huge teacher cheerleader. I was a teacher for 9 years, all in Florida.
And what did you teach?
Elementary.
Okay.
And then I was a principal for 14 years, elementary. And assistant principal at middle school, and then a superintendent for the lab school district for Florida State for 7 years. So kind of that whole thing. And the changes that I've seen over that 30-year career, everything Laura said, but from an administrator standpoint, it's the teachers that come out of teacher ed programs from colleges and universities, they're so excited about teaching. And then they're interviewed and they get that job, and they're just hit with everything Laura just talked about. And for principals, it's gone from being that person that people really look to as that leader in those schools. Now they're faced with the task of simply recruiting teachers into the field, because many people are not going down that road. It's the old adage, I've seen the job and I don't want it. So from an administrator standpoint, it's keeping teachers convinced to stay in the field, first of all, because now we know some research is telling us that they're 3 to 5 years and they're going on to something else. Many people who've been hung in there, like Laura, for I think you said 17 years, a lot of it is that this is what they've done, and maybe they're looking to finish out a career and they don't want to change. So I'm really passionate about recruiting teachers that want to do that, but then once they're in there, helping them navigate what they need to do to stay there, to motivate them, to encourage them. And I think communities, parents, it's tough on everybody, but when we can encourage these people who are really some unsung heroes for educating our kids, that's a great thing the community can get behind.
Next question, you need not be a teacher to answer this. You can be a parent or just anyone who's concerned about education. Looking at it from all sides, how has public education, private education, home schools, charter schools, all of those different flavors of schools, how have those different types of schools impacted you or your family? Yes, ma'am, both of you, Laura and Tamisha.
I've got a microphone. And
sure.
You said so many relevant things. I teach at Georgia State University. I'm kind of a stepchild. I'm at Perimeter College, so we're kind of kept separate. And I teach accounting, but I require my students to write discussions because they've got to be able to communicate. And oh my goodness, the writing skills are just plummeting. And we're everybody that I teach with, we're feeling the same thing. And if I had to put my finger on one thing, it would be technology. These kids, it makes me so sad, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but to see these 2-year-olds with a iPad in their hand, it is just robbing them. I see it with my own children because I let my standards drop, and it's easy to drop them. It's hard to raise them, I'm here to tell you. And they don't pick up books. They don't, those 10 or 15 minutes every day that you would read in the bathroom, on the sofa.
Didn't our parents say the same thing about television?
Perhaps, yes. But it's more accessible. You don't carry a TV in your pocket when you go out the door. And it's a babysitter for parents. Parents are taking the easy way out too often. I was having my car worked on the other day, and this mom came in with her 3 children. No technology, nothing. These kids were so good. They were so well behaved. I commended her,
Drives me nuts.
1,000 times.
It drives my wife nuts. And I don't care if I'm offending anybody. I'll just go ahead and say it. It drives me nuts to be going down the road. And if you really want to get my wife started, drive down the road, get behind one of these SUVs, mom and dad up front, 2 kids in the back, 2 screens.
Oh, it's horrible.
2 kids. They're built into the truck. My wife is like, talk to your kids.
I know.
This
it's
is your
horrible.
opportunity. They're a captive audience. Talk to your kids. But
Right.
different times.
And I want to say something else. My students, I teach at the Decatur campus, and I have most of my students come from the DeKalb schools. So my head's kind of spinning. I come from this bubble of Oconee County. I'm going into, a total different economy. And my students, they are so kind, earnest. I've left my cell phone in the bathroom twice. It is where I left it, my glasses, my sweater. That they are such wonderful people, but they've not had the skills that they are going to need in life. And I'm worried about the relevance of what we're doing, and what was I going to say? So 1/3 of my students are not born in this country. They're from Senegal, Burundi, Trinidad, a lot of Jamaicans and Vietnamese. It's very interesting. And so what I do is we introduce ourselves on the first day of class. I ask them 5 questions. Where do you work? Where did you go to high school? I can't ask where they're from, but I can ask where they went to high school. And what's a good book you've read? And the good books are getting scarcer and scarcer. But anyway, when I can identify my really good students and my really bad students, I want to know where they went to high school, the good and the bad. And my really good students are first-generation Americans and 2 from the military I was telling you about. And they tell me, this is so interesting, from Jamaica and Vietnam and Senegal, that they pay for their education in these poor countries. And so when they get home from school, the parents are asking them questions. What's your homework? What'd you learn today? There's just more accountability. And I don't think we can go there in America, but I feel like we've got to find a way to make education, to make people more, I don't know, what am I trying to say? To make, yes, to make it more valued, yes.
Tamisha.
For me, I have 1 child in public school, and I have 1 child in private school. My son attends the Downtown Academy, and my daughter goes to Hillsman. One thing I do see, the classroom to teacher ratio definitely has a big impact on what's going on in the classrooms. At his school, he has 12 students to the 1 teacher. At my daughter's school, I think she has like 30 kids in her science class.
How many?
30. They do everything on a computer. But for me, coming up in a low-income environment, and as I said earlier, being a minority, education was important to me. I had teachers who cared about me and my education. So a lot of the things that were instilled in me when I was younger, I instilled in my kids. So as a young parent, I do not allow my kids to have all that technology. My daughter has a little iPad, but she can only get it on the weekends. We go to the library, free fun, check out books and read, and it's free. I make my kids, we go to Bible study, and then at my son's school, he's learned the whole New Testament. 8 years old, so he's ready to find the scripture, But it comes from the things that were instilled in me, and I pass those down to my kids.
That's because it's your job. Yeah.
They say that the parents are your best teachers for your children, and I believe that. My wife and I, raise your hand. She's sitting out there. We homeschooled both of them, but truly it was her. Both our children all the way through high school. They're sitting next to her. Look, he's ducking his head down. That's my son. Raise your hand, Donovan. He's a UJ graduate, CPA. And sitting next to him is his sister, his little sister. Raise your hand. She's a WGA graduate also. She's got a degree in graphic design. And it can be done. There's obstacles out there. There's sacrifices to be made when you go that route, but there's nothing better than raising them up in the Lord.
Amen. Another education question. And we'll just kind of combine these two because they kind of flow together. And anybody wants to dive in here. In what ways have you experienced the current educational system benefiting your students and your family, hindering or stifling your family and students? And in what ways have school administrators been helpful, harmful, dismissive, attentive, any of those things? Yes, sir, Matt.
I think I can speak to it a couple ways. One, I grew up in a family of educators. My mom was, my wife's parents both are still now. And so I get to hear, Sunday afternoon dinners, I get to hear about what's wrong with education. So I've got that angle, but I've also got two kids, two girls, 7 and 11. And I've lived in 3 of the 6 counties the group represents. So I'm a Madison County graduate. And upon entering college in the real world, I realized that's a lot different than some of the Atlanta public school graduates. That's 2 different educations, I can assure you. And that's just rural town. And so I came into adulthood, I guess, as with a little bit of that in my mind as far as what I wanted for my kids and to put them on a level playing field. When we lived in Athens, I put them in private school. And not to say you can't get a good education in Clarke County, but the stats, I looked and looked and looked, and we wanted to. I had nothing against private, but we went that route. And now we're in Oconee and thinking about going back public. But I do think it's important to recognize the difference in education. The high school diploma is not the same across the board, depending on where you went. But as far as right now, the environment, what I pay for in private school is more the environment than the education. I'm fully comfortable they could get out and go to Oconee County right now and get as good academic education, but I feel safe dropping them off, and they were there on a personal level with my kids when we went through some medical issues with my wife, and there's no amount of money that I wouldn't pay to have that, and I don't know that they would have gotten the same attention in a public environment. So
who was talking earlier about you'd leave your cell phone and the restroom would be there, somebody bring it to you? Our son, I didn't bother to mention the school, but he graduated from a public school in the area and went to a private college, and he said the biggest adjustment he had to make, or among the biggest adjustments, academically, he said just socially, he said it's such a relief to not have to guard your iPhone. He said you leave your phone wherever you leave. You leave it on a bench. It's there when you come back. They have such a strict honor code at that college. Yeah, sure.
I don't know much about the Common Core, and I want to say I have a lot of respect for people who homeschool. I didn't do it. I always kind of wanted to, but couldn't figure it out, which is a cop-out, I guess. But anyway, I feel like the more we stress out about education, the more backwards we go. And I feel like that we're not doing a good job of teaching kindness, curiosity, these intangibles that the older I get, the more important. You can catch up in academics, but if you're not kind and curious and all these intangible things, you're not good for society. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know what the answer is. But
I learned kindness. I didn't learn algebra. That was my problem. Anyone else? Ashley.
I have experiences all. I have 2 children as well, 6 and 11, and we're currently in Barrow County. We relocated from Athens, Clarke County, and I grew up in Oconee County. But my experience was different, and I see some of the problems, and I don't want to say like problems with educators. I think it comes back down to the restrictions that are put on educators. All of these very strict policies that you have to adhere to, and all of this ground you have to cover with so little time to do it in, and creativity is stifled. Both of my children are advanced programs. The youngest one is in 1st grade, so she tested into her advanced program, began that when this year launched, and it's phenomenal. The The program itself, it's all about creativity. Every single portion or every subject matter that they take on goes through basically 3 stages, and it's discussion, construction, and then their explanation of the project. So there's an opportunity for them to show you how they perceive the information that you were giving to them. And they discuss, I mean, we're talking about 6-year-olds, and the information and the evolution that I see her go through each day is phenomenal. And even that program has improved in the 5 years since my oldest daughter began it. I don't recall having opportunities like that or being recognized with that information when I was coming up. I myself, which many people do not know, I was emancipated when I was 15, just a few weeks before I was 16. I was in Oconee. I relocated to Athens, Clarke County. I attended Clarke County High School for 1 week, and I withdrew myself. I withdrew myself, and I took my GED the same day. It was not for me, and it was just a very different environment. You know, again, I grew up in that bubble, and in Oconee 15 years ago was even, you know, smaller. You know, we had a blinking 4-way. We didn't have all of that we had now today, but I've furthered myself through information and education as an individual, and am now formally working towards my education. But I feel like those steps could have been met earlier if the teachers had had the freedom to teach in the way that they are able to. They know how to educate our children. Whereas, you know, in that PACE program or that advanced program that my daughter is in, she soars. It is phenomenal. She loves it. And then but she's only permitted an hour in that class a day. It's a teacher that's spread out through 4 grades that she has to do all of this work with these children, and then she goes back to her regular class and she's told to stop jumping ahead and to not answer unless she's asked, and that it's not question time, and it's time to be still. And these are all important things that she needs to learn, but we have to have discussions every day when she's told that she's sent home with a frowny face on her agenda because she answered a question out of turn. She's 6 years old.
Yeah.
We are stifling her creativity,
sure.
but the teacher
ma'am.
has something to meet, so she's under an immense amount of pressure.
Jacqueline.
It starts with the parents. That's where it starts.
It needs to end there, too.
Yes, and if you don't get involved, then your children slide. My 8th grader was sliding, so the other day I went to the school and sat in class with him and transferred each class with him. The
I bet he loved
teachers
that.
were phenomenal. The teachers were phenomenal, and they are willing to help if you ask. And if they see a parent is interested, definitely they're going to be there for you in Oconee County.
Well, I think it's through all county, you know, I think all the educators want to participate, and again, I think the restriction comes down to what they have to meet, what they have to accomplish, all of this pressure that's put on these teachers with very little funding, very little time. And we're those parents that you love. We're the ones that are, hey, here's, you know, those 500 things you asked for, we'll buy all your supplies. I want my child to be given this opportunity to succeed, and they are. But again, I think it just comes down to the restriction that's put on our educators. They have so much to offer and so little room to work with.
Anyone else on education before we move along?
I have a gifted and special ed classroom. I'm an inclusion teacher, and I'm certified in gifted, so I get the gifted students as well. They are pulled out for an hour 3 days a week, not even every day, because we have so many gifted students that the teacher doesn't have time because they've got her doing another job where she was a full-time teacher, gifted teacher. Now she's 1 hour a morning, like you said, a gifted teacher, and then the rest of the day she's a STEM teacher. So then they come back to my room, so I have to create 3 different lesson plans to differentiate between those children every day, and try not to send them home with a salad face, you know. But, you know, when you're doing that, you're there till 6, 7 o'clock every afternoon trying to catch up on paperwork and things you have to do for those students. So I appreciate you.
I respect teachers thoroughly. Y'all should be the highest paid salary.
Thank you. But I saw on Facebook the other day, it said Teachers are afraid of what the principal will say. Principals are afraid of what the superintendent will say. The superintendent is afraid of what the school board will say. The school board is afraid of what the parents will say. And the parents are afraid of what the children will say. But the children are afraid of no one. And a lot of times we see that as the case. But we appreciate parents who come in and
Good place to
straighten
wrap
them
that
out.
up. Thank you, thank you. Freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. And again, the same process we've used. Who am I not hearing from? Linda sitting there trying to hide. Didn't I say that? Dive in here. You don't have to, but anybody that wants to. Is the term freedom of speech something you think much about? Who gives a lot of thought to freedom of speech?
I don't, because I just say what I need to say. And it falls where it does.
Right.
I mean, that's just
Sure.
how I am.
Who else?
Can I ask something?
Sure.
So your husband's a policeman, or maybe somebody else knows this. I know that we're told that our phone conversation and text and all, we're archived and stored away. Is anybody listening or looking at what we do on the local level? I'm just curious.
My understanding, and I would defer to any law enforcement who might be here, is that for those sorts of things to happen, certainly for recorded phone calls, you would need warrants, because that would have to happen in advance. We're going to record your phone call because we think you're a drug dealer. We're going to have to record your phone call. You would have to get a warrant for that. Now, you're involved in some crime. We've arrested you for some horrible crime. We're going to grab your phone, and we're going to need a warrant for that, and we'll go through your phone, and we'll go through your text messages. That's my understanding. No, there is no, I don't think, and I stand to be proven wrong on this, I don't think there's some massive database somewhere where all of your texts are stored. I don't think that's the case.
I know we're being collected. Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Right. And all your Facebook and all your Instagram.
Well, that stuff, yeah,
and
that stuff you
Twitters.
put out there, yeah.
But I
Yeah.
wonder, at the local level, like, how close does it get? You know what I mean? It's real close. That's what I'm wondering.
I think the new iPhone's going to unlock with your face. Put your face on it and it'll unlock. It's like scary.
Does anyone hesitate to have conversations with people more so now than in times past? Any concerns? Has any concern about free speech discouraged anyone from having any conversation?
I think people get defensive and upset about anything these days. It's so much going on with politics and just so much in the media that you have to kind of watch what you say or you're going to offend somebody, regardless of what it is. I mean, you may not think much of it, but the smallest thing offends people these days. So I try to kind of watch what I say.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Diane.
I second that. I actually voiced my opinion on something with another customer. And it just so happened another female customer that was not even there for me kind of got offended by what I said. As a matter of fact, I got called a sexist in my work business, which I thought it was hilarious. And she was actually an educator for part of UGA. I was really disappointed. I'm actually from California, and a lot of people, we don't see what the South has that I had to learn. You know what I mean? Like the Southern hospitality I love, but there's that division, and it's much greater here than in the West Coast. And so sometimes you have to figure out what can you say, how can you say it, and in my business, I work with a bunch of guys. We don't have a filter, so, and I'm one of the guys, so when I say things, I mean them, and I say, hey, this is what I mean, and if it hurts your feelings, that sounds like a personal problem, but we can talk about it. You know, I don't get aggressive, if that makes sense. I'd rather talk about it and let's fix it. Okay, if an apology is fine, then we move forward. But people do need to chill, is the way I have to say. Get off Facebook. Facebook's no good. I actually haven't had a Facebook for quite a few years now, and I got off of it for the same reason. Because people were use it in a negative way, and it was meant to stay in touch with those that are far from you. And that's what the concept was. But now you have so many videos, and my nephew's 14, I don't have children, but he did not get a cell phone from me. He didn't get a computer from me or anything that I could afford in that way. I did send him stuff that was educational. I sent him books. I said, if you read that, then we can talk about an iPhone. It took him about He's 14 now, and he just got an iPhone. So he's getting there. But yeah, people do need to relax and just know it's going to be okay. We're all here to work together, not against each other is the way I feel.
Anyone had opportunities in which what you have experienced personally might have been beneficial to a conversation, and this kind of alludes to what you're talking about, but you refrained from speaking out because what you had to say might be misunderstood. You ever, the word you used was filter. Who filters themselves?
In my line of work, sometimes it's better to listen. You learn a lot more just listening and not speaking. And I have to be very, very careful for what I say. Religion.
Has anybody ever like just stormed out of the chair? I mean,
I had one when I first started doing hair. She didn't like the way I styled it. She popped her cape off, and I went in the back and I said, I quit.
Well, see, that was because you were a lousy hairstylist. It wasn't something you said.
But I did not say anything to that lady.
Okay, that was my
question. You see what I'm saying?
Do you ever say anything that made anybody
I mean,
leave?
it's hard.
Yeah. I would be, by the way, I would be your least problem because I've always fallen asleep.
We're
I sit in the chair
therapists.
and I fall asleep.
We're therapists, too.
Yeah, there you go. Would speaking out, has it ever been detrimental to you personally, to your employment, to your social interactions? Anybody with a story along those lines? Yes, sir. Trey, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Going back, right before you asked that, I was thinking, whenever we go into somebody's home, we meet tons of different people, and it's, usually we're coming into their houses and stuff, and usually within a short amount of time, it's pretty easy to pick up on where they stand along the political or even religious lines. And even when I agree with, or I feel like I probably would be on their side, so to speak, or agree with them, you never bring it up. It's not good for business. And I have to tell my employees, that my employees are younger than I am, and they don't kind of always know sort of what's appropriate sometimes, and like you say, you never know when you're going to say that one thing, and all of a sudden you are the on Facebook is that company, that owner.
So your guys are not wearing Make America Great Again hats into people's houses?
Well, I'm sorry, say it again.
You're not wearing Make America Great Again hats into people's houses?
No. And I have to tell them, look, this is work. You can talk about that. And I have guys who I know, I probably did not vote the same way as they did. And that's perfectly fine. From 9 to 5, it really needs to be off the books because you just can't afford, and I hate that. It's unfortunate that we're here tonight to have a conversation. And it's unfortunate that you can't say anything nowadays because someone will launch a campaign against you, and next thing you know, you are out of business. And it's unfortunate that it's gotten to that level that you just can't talk,
Tamisha.
I just want to say one thing. I have 2 small children, one 8 and one is 11, and I think that has been relayed subliminally to the kids as well. We were out in the store, and every time they would say the president's name, they would whisper. And I was like, why are y'all saying his name like that? And they would say, because I don't want anybody to say anything. And so for kids to already kind of filter what they say, and usually they have no filter.
Right. Yeah.
That's being relayed down to the kids is, I guess I can't say what I want to say without offending anybody.
Where do you feel most uncomfortably about speaking candidly about hot button topics? Work, school, home, church. Where are you least likely? You referenced work. You tell your people, 9 to 5, leave it outside. Where else? Joe.
Well, on the board of directors, we started out in just one county, and now we're in 115 counties in the state of Georgia. And we're completely donation driven. So we have to go out and kind of beg for money, trying to get grants and stuff. And the first time I did it, I was kind of open about it and very passionate. And we didn't get the grant. So I had to learn that I had to watch what I said and how I say it, because if you're not politically correct in what you say, even though what you say is for the right reasons and the right things, people just shy away from you, and that is so, so wrong. And that's part of the problems that we have on the other end in the Veterans Resource Center, where the suicide rate is so high on veterans. On Tuesday nights, which I'm missing tonight, we have our PTSD meetings. And that's a place where veterans can come and just speak their mind. Nobody knows a veteran better than a veteran. And we have no time limit. We start at 7 o'clock, and there's been Tuesday nights where we're there at midnight, and we're just there, just talking, communicating with each other. And you can't get that out in the public. They don't understand, especially Vietnam vets. We were kind of spit upon when we got back to the States. I can remember it because I was part of it. But it's great when you can have camaraderie between yourselves and you can speak from your heart and people understand you, and you don't have to be politically correct.
Anyone else on the subject of free speech? Yes, ma'am, Ashley again.
I agree. I'm a veteran as well, and that camaraderie that we had in the service, I miss it, and you don't experience it everywhere else, where even in situations where we may have disagreed with the actions of our commander-in-chief, although we couldn't speak out necessarily in public about them, Facebook can get you into quite a bit of trouble in the military. But to have that, again, camaraderie, I use that word, it was such a comfortable environment to speak freely. And we, as she stated, you know, I would say maybe the military similar to the West Coast thinking, where we just kind of said what we thought. There's no filter in the military. And it's a little bit harder to apply it in civilian life to make sure you're remaining politically correct. I established an organization when I ran the restaurant called Operation Red, Black, and Blue, where we worked to raise funds and school supplies for the 500 identified homeless children that were residing in Clarke County. Worked with all 22 schools, did a large amount of fundraising, worked to get school supplies for them, and I even found myself in situations where in order to accept a gift, I had to apply a filter. People would come in with a donation, and they would want it for a specific reason. You know, what children are these going to, and you know, are they affiliated with a church, or where I think the bigger picture was lost, and it came down to someone's specific beliefs instead of taking in everything into consideration. That was definitely a time.
I want to try. I know you're trying to dance between the lines there. People were walking in and saying, "If don't give it to the Jewish kids," that sort of thing.
Are they legal?
Are they okay?
Are they legal? Are these children legal?
Okay.
Do they go to a church?
Uh-huh.
Are their families religious? And this helped them decide if they were going to provide this donation or not.
Wow.
And I was very clear about it. That is not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about these children having something to eat over a period when the school is closed. If we could just focus on that right now, then you can get to that in your own time. But that was the time where I had to bite my lip and really say, that's not our focus, that's not our concern, that's not what we're here for. There's a problem, we're looking to, find a solution.
Yeah. Healthcare. From your experience, how does healthcare, the ability to see a doctor and get medical help, affect you and your family? On the end.
Healthcare, by me being in business for myself and not being employed for an already established business, is hard. I pay over $100 a month for healthcare just for myself. And then looking to also add on, I have one son who is he's not disabled, he's deaf, hard of hearing, so he receives aid. Then I have my other two sons who I'm now adding onto my healthcare coverage. And it makes it hard because on top of paying all of my other business fees, my household fees, then I'm having to pay a costly healthcare fee, And it gets tough. It makes it hard, because if I'm not having a good month, I might not have health coverage next month.
Yeah.
So I think the Health Care Act has helped, and if we lose it, it's going to be a lot of people who won't be able to see medical help. It's like my boyfriend, he's working, he just started working, so he hasn't gotten his health care coverage, and he was sick on Saturday morning. And I took him to the hospital, and as soon as they found out he didn't have health care coverage, we were out of there. They treated him, but at the same time, we were rushed. So it can be, it can be very hard, especially if you're paying for it out of pocket, where it doesn't come out of your check every week.
That's basically the two types of people, and we got both types, I think, on this panel and certainly in the audience. I'm in that group you just referenced there. I pay for it, but it comes out of my check. And I'm not handing it out. You people who own businesses, you're seeing it from the really rough end. To the next question then, do the current healthcare policies affect your business? If so,
Absolutely.
I would think so.
Absolutely.
And your business, again, is?
We own a heating and air conditioning company here. But we can't give our employees what they need. We can't give them the benefits that we would love to give them right now. I do have health care. If it makes you feel better, my health care for me alone is $900 a month. $900 with a $6,000 deductible. I never made it, ever. But our employees, I would love to give it to them. It's just right now, where do you get it? Blue Cross Blue Shield's leaving.
Right. And, not to cut you off, I've been looking into group insurance.
There's not any for small business.
And that's yeah.
No, there's not.
That's part of one of the proposals
hard.
is to have group insurance for small businesses.
I'm sorry?
That's part of one of the recent proposals that never
Right.
goes anywhere, but that's part of one of the proposals.
And it
to
would
have
be great.
Wonderful.
Because to attract great employees, you got to give them something. And that's what we would love to do. We want to give it to them. We want them to benefit. We want them to do well. Because if they do well, we do well as a company. So.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to come in from a slightly different angle. So I retired 2 years ago, almost, after working over 28 years in the healthcare business. Healthcare, like school systems, I believe, is filled with people who go into it because they have a passion for serving. They have a passion to care. They're often among the most brightest and altruistic people ever. I mean, they really do have a desire for it. So much of the healthcare work has nothing to do with health care. If you want to look at why it's so expensive, you can understand, okay, we have someone in the emergency department. They have to have all this certification, board-certified ED physicians. So all of these high rates for salaries, 24 hours a day. You've got to have all this medicine available 24/7. You have to have all this equipment available. You have to have all these trained people. Well, that makes sense. But what you may not understand is you've also got a wave of people whose job it is to try and figure out what diagnosis code to apply to your bill, to your experience, to make sure that it passes muster with the insurance company. You've got another wave of people that you're paying for that are trying to anticipate what you may and may not be charged for, billed for, documented for. The insurance company has waves of people whose job is to stop prompt payment, to find any slight glitch with your bill. And then there's these third-party contract companies that are making a buku load of money, and I actually know some people who've gone to the dark side, as we tell them. And they work as contract employees either for the insurance company, for the pre-cert company, or for the healthcare company, trying to find out after the fact who made a mistake so they can either penalize you, take money back. There are so many people that work for the bureaucracy of healthcare that have not one thing to do with encouraging, helping, or healing. And if we could get some of that out of the system, we might actually have health care that we could afford.
Thank you.
I have to, in full disclosure, I have really good health insurance and I'm grateful, and my husband uses it a lot. But I have decided that I don't ever meet my deductible even though it's low. I think that we're too focused on healthcare and we're not focused on health. And so to that end, over the past few years, I've had some issues, but I didn't want to go on medicine or anything. So I've tried to look at diet, going back to the basics, going to journey juice, drinking turmeric juice, and it's cured almost all of my ills at a very, low cost. And I feel like that we are just in a rat race, and and it's kind of like when I listen to Clarke Howard. I like Clarke Howard, but he's so focused on credit. It's like, let's don't worry about borrowing money so much. And I feel like that's the same with healthcare. We need to be more focused on health and kind of take things into our own, cook more and no processed foods. And we've just been kind of sold a bill of goods in some respects. Does anybody want to say something?
Matt?
Yeah, I'll throw something in there. A couple of things. One, from the employer standpoint, at our peak with our property management business, we had about 40 employees, and you can just factor in an extra $8,000 an employee to cover benefits. And we weren't doing 401ks or anything fancy. This is just your state and federal mandated fees and your health care benefits. So that is just a number to throw out there. It's going to be in that ballpark. So when you see your salary offer, just understand the employer's got a larger burden. But second, I'll throw in, and this is where I may offer a little different angle on it. And I said earlier, I think we get into these two polar opposite camps where either healthcare should be free or healthcare should be paid by a certain group, and the people who don't have money to pay for it should benefit from that. And everybody picks sides based on whichever flag you raise. But the truth of it is there's a limited pool of money to pay for what is the best healthcare in the world. We've got the doctors and facilities and medicines, and we strive to the technology and the research we do to keep people alive as long as we possibly can. We want all the best things, but we're going to fight over who's going to pay for it. So I think we should look closely at both sides of that. My wife, as I mentioned earlier, had breast cancer. We did that for 2 years, and millions, who knows what we spent. And I had people ask me, were we not frustrated over the $3,000 deductible? And as long as you don't need it, it's easy to get frustrated. But when you do, we have, the system is broken, clearly. But I think we need to really have a discussion about, come out of our two camps that we're supposed to be in and really look at it more closely and what we've got rather than the shortfalls of it.
Beleen.
It just caught my attention that he said the healthcare system should be free. The healthcare system is free. It's just that it's free for the wrong people. It's free for the people who break the law and are not honest. I witnessed as a social worker many cases of people who go to the Athens Regional Medical Center and other hospitals. They have babies. When the bill comes, the person in charge asks them, "Are you working?" They say, "No, I don't work." "Is your husband working?" "No, he doesn't work." And I know they are working, but since they have a false ID number, there is no way the system can locate that the person is saying the truth or not. So what does the hospital do? They pass the bill to the government. In other words, we, the American people, are paying for those babies. So if the healthcare is going to be free, it should be free for the American people and the people who are honest, not for the people who are lying to the system and stealing the welfare of the American people.
Joe.
On another way of looking at healthcare, I can't afford healthcare for my people. And one of the reasons is the workman comp health care. It is out of the roof. Just my insurance that I have to pay for workman's comp wants me to bring it down to just me and maybe one other working, but I can't work anymore. So looking at cost, the workman comp, healthcare, and the doctors that we have to have, with a list of all these different doctors if somebody gets hurt, that's all dollars that small businesses have to pay for, and people don't realize that. When I look at what my employees make, that actually cash they get, you can almost double that I'm paying out in health care benefits or Social Security taxes or whatever. So the cost is way too much for small businesses to bear.
Anyone else on the topic of health care? Anyone with current challenges who wants to talk about whether the system's making it better or worse for them? Diane down front, and then Ashley in the back.
I just want to say one thing real quick while I'm passing this. My doctor can't afford health insurance. Blows my mind.
Diane.
On healthcare, I don't know why they make it so difficult, but it's also based on groups. Like, I work for dealerships, and the way they had it, we used to have like $30 a week taken out of our check for healthcare because we were such a large group. Like, this dealership owner owned like 6 dealerships, so we had 300 employees or whatever the case may be. But then I come here to Georgia, and I did notice that the smaller the group, the higher amount you pay weekly, and it makes no sense to me. You would think that if you have a small business, you would help, or if they see you have a small business, that they would help you so the employees can be covered, because it is true. If I go somewhere else to apply and they say, hey, you have no health care, you don't have these other benefits and this other business does, because they're a larger group, I'm not going to apply at your business. I'm not going to want to work for you. And that could be a loss for that business owner too. It could be a good employee. We actually had one of our employees that worked for this company for over 20 years almost leave the dealership just because our premiums changed, and he said, I can't afford that, and one of my kids has to have it. And I was in disbelief, because I was like, how you guys can't let go of this employee just because of that? I mean, they had to come up with some kind of pay plan to cover that extra overage, because he was just like, all I'm doing here is working weekly just to pay for my health care. So how am I gonna pay for the rest of what my kids need? And I don't have children, and I was on his side. I was like, man, I'm on your side. I think you don't need to go, you need to let them figure out. And luckily I work for a good company that is willing to do that for the employees, and they try different companies. I think a lot of small businesses also have to do a lot of research on what you can get on, what you can use. Don't settle. Some of these insurance companies do not tell you, and I do a lot of research. I mean,
Matt made this
you
point.
have to figure it out.
The first thing Matt said tonight was that so much of his business has nothing to do with his business.
Yeah.
He said, well, they need to research. Well, that has nothing to do with selling cars, which is why they're in business. Ashley.
I have a similar experience to a lot of you, whereas, again, with my husband, he received that 1% pay increase.
And he was military, correct?
We were both
okay.
military, and he's currently a police officer. Sorry. But the premiums rose as well. As soon as that 1% came out, the premiums rose. Now, he and our daughters are covered under his plan. I'm covered through the VA, which is another problem in itself.
Sure.
I don't go through his insurance because it's so costly. But to go to the VA is almost like not having health care. The outpatient clinics are overwhelmed, understaffed. We're basically a number when we come in. They're throwing prescriptions at you. And then to have a service done, like an x-ray, they want you to drive 104 miles. I mean, it's, you're talking about a 15-minute procedure that needs, or a 15-minute picture that takes you 9 hours to accomplish. And I mean, it's just missing vital equipment like that at the Athens outpatient center is where I go to. And every time I'm referred to go to Augusta for a treatment, I often don't do it for the simple fact, I mean, I'm a mother, I work, I have responsibilities, I cannot afford to be gone for 9 hours. My husband works, what do we have going on? Where are the children gonna go? It's, where a piece of equipment could be added, and again, that comes down to like funding, and being able to, but the accessibility or the lack thereof for things to be done through the VA are just completely
All of you folks, and not my own point here, and then we'll move on. All of you folks who advocate for single payer, that's fine. Spend some time talking with people who know about the VA, because that is single payer. That's how that works.
I'm VA also.
Yeah, my father was, and I heard every story that you just told. I saw. Finally, this evening, and we got about almost 25 minutes left, so we can cover this with closing questions also. Immigration. First of all, and I know she's already reaching for the microphone. And I know we heard your story earlier. Did any of you become U.S. citizens through the immigration process or have family members who did? We know Beleen. Anyone else? Diane, who else? Anybody here illegally? Show of hands. No. All right. Beleen, let's start with you.
Well, I could give you a story of my life, but I don't have time. So I'm going to give you an overview. I was born in Colombia. My family was poor, extremely poor. My father managed to raise the family as a medium-class family, working hard. But we were ripped off of our money twice, by the guerrillas and by thieves. We had to run for our life with nothing, absolutely nothing. During my life, I had to stand all kind of abuse, crime, dangers of kidnapping, all imaginable things, abusive things that you can imagine. Nevertheless, I never thought about coming to America as an illegal, breaking the laws of this country. To the contrary, I always thought, I'm going to stay in my country, fight for my country in any way I can, even if it is called against the guerrillas, against crime. If it's the simple way to vote, but I'm going to stay in my country and do whatever I can in my country. I got 3 jobs. I never was rich, even working 3 jobs, but I managed to have a decent life. I bought my own apartment. My brothers and sisters did something similar. I never thought about coming to America. But here comes a gringo to Colombia, and I fell in love with this gringo. He came to America, and one day he called me by phone, he proposed. He said, I wanted to marry him. I fell in love, so I came on the phone. I came to America without planning. I had the fortune to come as a legal person, but it doesn't matter if I'm illegal or illegal. I had a lot of difficulties here too. I had to fight hard bullying because I didn't think the same kind of talks the people in the university taught. So I had to stand problems with the language barrier, with all kind of problems, economical problems. Nobody paid for my education. I had to work from 1997 to 2004 to save money to pay for my books, my tuition in the university. And then in 2002, I went to the University of Georgia to get a master's degree. All of this I had to work and save the money to pay for. I never thought about, because I'm legal or I'm illegal, I deserve DACA or I deserve to be helped or I deserve pity. No, I went to work and I paid for my own education and all of my needs. And it amazed me that people who come here, it doesn't matter if they are illegals or legal, it doesn't matter. But it amazed me seeing people saying, you are breaking our families. The American government is not breaking our families. When I came here, I made the decision to break from my family. It was my responsibility to come here without family. I didn't have anybody here except my husband. I had to fight all kind of barriers, language barrier, economical problems, but it didn't give me the right to say, this is not my president. I respect the fact of who the American people elect for president. It doesn't matter if I like him or not, but it's the American people electing the president, and we are not supposed, as immigrants, to go and protest and say, this is not my president, because the American people are electing the president, and we should respect that. Also, all of those difficulties, all of those stories that we bring as immigrants, we don't come here because we had an easy life. All the immigrants, most of us, had a very difficult life in our countries and here. We had to fight against many things. But it doesn't give us the right to break the laws, to be not honest, to take advantage of the American welfare in our favor. What we should do is work hard and be honest and fight for overcome our problems. And not to go against the government, because we should respect the fact that this country is giving us the opportunity to become better people and have a better life here.
Go, girl.
Diana?
I'm with her on the fact that when I went to school, there wasn't many programs to give me incentives to go to school, okay? They didn't say, hey, we're gonna help you with your tuition because you're an immigrant. We didn't have any of that. I had to pay on top of my classes and my units a fee of $500. So at some point on one semester, I can only take one class, because at the time I was making $6.25 an hour.
And I'm sorry, this is in California?
This is in California.
And if you don't mind saying, you're an immigrant from where?
I'm sorry?
From where?
From California, from Los Angeles, yeah.
Okay.
So you would think in California you would have more help, but you didn't. And my parents didn't give up on me either. My dad was like, you have to figure it out. You know, I didn't even realize I didn't have any papers until I was 15, 16 years old, that's when my friends were all getting their driver's license permits. And I was like, hey, I want to get my own. My dad had to break it to me. Yeah, and he was an immigrant, and he figured it out. He didn't have any help from the government. He couldn't get anything. He figured it out. He actually built a little business helping local other businesses with construction and stuff like that, and didn't take advantage of the system and didn't raise his girls to take advantage of the system.
Your father was from which country, if you don't mind saying?
He's from Mexico.
Mexico. Okay.
Yeah, Mexico City. And majority of immigrants do flee because of how horrible their country may be. You know, Mexico City, maybe when I was born, it couldn't have been horrible, but to him, it was dangerous. To him, it was like, you know, this is too much. We have to get out of here. We have to make it better. And he made this choice to bring us illegally. I'm only 7 years old. So I do feel a lot of these young generation, they're brought here when they're really young, right? And all they know is this country. And then we have so many people telling them, hey, you don't deserve to be here. And instead of using it in a positive way and teaching them, hey, we have now these programs that, yes, sometimes, like the DACA program, I do believe that it is helpful. You do have young people that are immigrants. Do you rather have them outside doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing, or do you rather give them an incentive to keep them in the system? Because they do get driver's license. They start to become people that are good citizens. You know, they want to drive, they want to pay insurance, they want to do things legally, and they're also getting education. Now, mind you, I do believe that they should pay for their education. Yes, I do, because I paid for my own. So why should anybody get a free ride? Anybody. I don't care if you're an immigrant or not. But at the same token, I do believe a lot of the natural-born citizens take that for granted. We have a lot of spoiled young people that don't realize that they have this opportunity, that they can go to school just without having to deal with programs. And many of their older generation paid their way, and also now giving them little incentives. Hey, you can get help here, you can get help there, and they choose not to. And I pay my taxes all the time, and I always complain about it. I'm like, where is all my money going to? But I do believe that we have to help them. I think when we had that, just for one more minute, but when this whole deal with the president election, people were so afraid. And I can see both worlds, but the immigrant people, they were just very afraid because they felt they were going to get picked up tomorrow. And it was kind of this conception thanks to the media and all that. But then you find a lot of people leading them in the wrong direction too. Like you can also tell them, hey, immigration has a whole page. You can Google them. You can Google them just like you do when you receive something from the IRS. You can get some knowledge. Apply for your situation. Are you allowed in this country? Can you apply for a visa? Don't tell them, hey, let's all rally you and take you out to picket, make a cardboard, and start going in here, take a day off from work. No, use it in an educational way. Teach them. Say, hey, you know what? Let me help you with this. What's your situation? How long have you been here? And God knows I hate them immigration lawyers. They're the worst. They take advantage of people, and it doesn't take much to help them. But I do think that there's a misconception on, we've done that ourselves. These programs, we allowed people to pass these programs. Nobody has really shown up to say, hey, are they really worth having them or not? I didn't have them. So when I do hear about another program who's going to help someone else because you are brown or whatever the case may be, I think it's ridiculous. I'm like, no, go to work. So I had one friend that became a teacher, and she used to work nights, and she was an immigrant the whole time with me. And she became a teacher, and she would work nights and go to school during the day, and she looked like a zombie every day, but she still did it. So I don't pity people, but I do believe that we have to help somehow. You can't expect a person that's lived here not because they decided to come here. They were literally here since they were 2 or 4, and then say, okay, now, you know what, forget it, you got to go. And all they want to do is be good citizens.
Any of our gringos want to weigh in on the issue of immigration? Yes, ma'am. Beth.
At Athens Regional Medical Center, now Piedmont, many years ago, Clarke County had a high incidence of premature births. We had many, many women who had no prenatal care. They had no access to a doctor. They were totally out of the health system. They would get pregnant. They would give birth to premature babies who would end up in the neonatal intensive care unit for weeks, months, longer. Incredibly expensive, not only financially, but often these children were not very healthy, and they would have a life of limitations because of their lack of prenatal care. So there was a group of midwives that formed together under the auspices of the hospital, and they provided free or reduced care to these women, and they greatly reduced the incidence of premature births, greatly reduced the incidence of people in the neonatal intensive care unit for months at a time, gave babies a healthier chance of life. And oh, by the way, paying for the midwives was a whole lot cheaper than paying for the months or years involved in neonatal intensive care and a restricted birth or restricted life. I think the same principle sometimes applies to immigration. Do we really want, and I'm not weighing in there, I'm just asking a question, do we really want a subclass of people who don't have basic care, basic access to education or medical care, because are we not then limiting their opportunities for the future? And oh, by the way, I think it costs us a whole lot more money with prison, with other issues. I'm not weighing one side or the other. I'm just saying I think the gentleman earlier who said we get into one camp or the other, I suggest that we talk about ands, not either or, but and. What can we do to say legal immigration, but also acknowledge if we've got people here in this country that are not, are we really serving ourselves better by putting them in a separate class and expecting them just to figure it out on their own without any assistance? It's just, to me, a very pragmatic business question.
Anyone else?
I just want to say something. I have a favorable impression of all the immigrants I've seen, legal, illegal. I don't even know. I'm not allowed to ask what their status is. But I think that everybody who's here, I just want to know, how many people do we want to take on in America? Because Nigeria is spilling over, Burundi, Senegal, Jamaica, Vietnam, it goes on and on and on. And so if we like our standard of living, and to me it's an economic thing. I mean, immigrants have a lot to offer. They are hardworking, they are, zealous, they love our way of life. But can we be honest and pragmatic about legal and illegal immigrants? How many do we want? And can we do something like Japan or China or Australia? They have immigration policies. I mean, can't we do something rational? Because it's amazing. What I'm seeing in Atlanta is different from what I'm seeing out here. There's a lot of people coming in.
Unless someone else wants to speak to immigration, we need to begin to, because of the constraints of time, wrap this up. And we'll do it this way. Closing questions, and I'll combine the two, and anybody who wants to dive in, please do. We have about 10 minutes before they turn out the lights and tell us to leave. In what ways have the experiences of other panelists impacted you this evening? And is this the kind of focus group format? Is this a kind of a tool you can see benefiting our communities at large? Anybody want to take on either or both of those?
Yes.
All right.
I definitely see a benefit, because sometimes you think you're the Lone Ranger out there. And listening to the panelists here makes me feel good about what I do and the path that I'm taking. And I appreciate it, and I wish we could have more like it, or get together and have our own little meetings and groups to discuss the issues that we encounter day-to-day business.
Tamisha.
He basically said, kind of,
Okay,
I want to
then you don't have
piggyback
to
off
say
of that. Yeah, piggyback off of that. It changed my perception, especially being a new business owner, because it gets discouraging.
Tell me again your kind of business. I'm sorry.
Grant writing consulting for nonprofits and small businesses. It does get discouraging, but hearing the success stories and the fact that they're still striving towards greatness is definitely inspiring.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I just think that engaging in conversations like this, different types of views, open minds, and just having people from different walks of life, it brings a whole different perspective, just like both of them just said. And I think we need more open minds getting together and not so many like minds getting together in order for things to change.
Yes, sir, Matt.
Yeah, I could just let her comment go. The only reason I came was when John said it was a nonpartisan event. I don't see any reason to get together with a bunch of one side or the other that's just going to cheer on and champion the same cause. If we can't get together and talk about issues in a logical manner, rather than just following what your Flavor of the Month TV channel is telling you to think, then we're never going to get anywhere. So.
Anyone else? Ashley.
I agree completely. I think this highlighted the fact that we all come from different backgrounds or different places in our lives, but have a similar interest in progressing as a society in whole. And again, I came as well because this was, and I did have, my, I guess, questions to say before I came, where I was like, a political event that's not political? Let's see. But I was very pleased with the evening. I really enjoyed listening to everyone's perspective, and I think we did exactly what we came here to do.
Anybody who disagrees? Anybody who would rather have gone to the dentist tonight? Anybody had a horrible time and never do this again? Anybody else? Joan, does anybody need to say anything before we wrap up for the evening? Let's thank our panelist while she's making her way up here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I knew it would be delightful, but I didn't know it would be quite this delightful. Thank you all so much. I want to tell you that now it's your turn to take part in this focus group. There's a sheet of paper in your program that gives you an opportunity to circle the topic that you feel like out of this focus group became the focal point. A lot of good things were said, but if you would just circle the things that you think were the focal point and then answer the questions that are in that focus paper that you have in your program. Again, I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank our moderator. Exceptional, exceptional group tonight, and I'm just really grateful for that. Before we go, I just want to also thank the Conservative Republican Women of Northeast Georgia who gave the platform for this kind of an event. Very, very proud of that, because if we cannot come together in civil dialogue, I don't know what hope we have. This gives me a lot of hope tonight. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Without further ado, I'm going to say good night. Before I do, I want to thank our videographer, Jan Horn, who is with Studio 25 Productions, and the fact that she has captured this for us tonight, that we can go back and again be encouraged by what we've heard tonight. So with no further ado, good night. Please remember to continue to engage in conversation with others and have things like this more often. Good night. Good night.